Keir Starmer's Labour government is facing mounting pressure from Caribbean leaders as they intensify calls for slavery reparations, demanding that the UK confront its colonial past and the ongoing legacies of the transatlantic slave trade. After decades of rejection by previous British governments, officials from the Caribbean believe there's now a chance that the UK, under Labour leadership, might be more open to engaging in reparations discussions. Hilary Beckles, chairman of the Caribbean Community CARICOM Reparations Commission, has expressed hope that Starmer will be willing to engage in talks. CARICOM, a coalition of 15 Caribbean nations, including Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago, has been at the forefront of the reparations movement for years. They have repeatedly urged former European colonial powers to issue formal apologies and make financial reparations to nations affected by slavery. Beckles emphasised that former colonial powers like Britain have failed to fully acknowledge their involvement in the horrors of the slave trade and its damaging effects on Caribbean societies. While Britain has issued apologies for various colonial wrongs, the question of reparations has consistently been ignored. In 2016, CARICOM sent letters to Britain and other European countries requesting discussions on reparations, but no responses were ever received. Now, with a new government in power and a Prime Minister who has promised change, CARICOM hopes the UK may finally agree to engage. The reparations conversation is not new. Many Caribbean nations have long been pushing for a comprehensive plan to address the lingering damage caused by colonial exploitation and the slave trade. Their demands include financial compensation, debt cancellation, and technology transfers to help repair the socio-economic damage still felt across the Caribbean. Additionally, CARICOM has called for an official apology from the UK and other former colonial powers, seeing it as a crucial part of achieving reparatory justice. Previous British governments have rejected these demands, arguing that slavery was a historical injustice that has been resolved with the abolition of the practice. The British government has also pointed to the compensation paid to slave owners during abolition, although critics argue that nothing was paid to the enslaved people who suffered. This stance has been a significant source of frustration for Caribbean leaders, but there is cautious optimism now that David Lammy, a prominent figure in the Labour government, may be able to influence the conversation. Lammy, the foreign minister, is of Caribbean descent and is a direct descendant of enslaved people. He has been a long-time advocate for reparations and has spoken about the lasting legacy of slavery. Ahead of his appointment as foreign minister, Lammy noted that his family history would inform his work in this role. Lammy's history and his past support for the reparations movement have raised hopes among Caribbean leaders that the Labour government may be open to addressing this issue in a more significant way. However, it remains unclear where Keir Starmer himself stands on reparations. In 2023, a Labour spokesperson said that reparations were not part of the party's official policy, signalling that the issue remains sensitive and divisive within the UK. While some in the government may be sympathetic, there is no formal commitment to address the demands for reparations. Still, the fact that the conversation is gaining momentum in global circles suggests the issue may continue to rise. The timing for reparations talks is critical, especially with slavery reparations expected to be a key topic at the upcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa, which Starmer is expected to attend. The Commonwealth, largely composed of former British colonies, has become a platform for addressing the enduring impact of colonialism and slavery. Several Commonwealth nations have expressed strong support for reparations, and all three candidates running for the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth have endorsed the reparations movement. If Starmer's government agrees to engage in these talks, it would represent a monumental shift in the UK's stance on reparations. For decades, British leaders have resisted any formal acknowledgement of reparatory justice, maintaining that the abolition of slavery and compensation to slave owners in the 19th century had resolved the issue. Critics argue, however, that the damage caused by colonial rule continued long after slavery was abolished, leaving many Caribbean nations impoverished and facing systemic challenges, including economic underdevelopment and racial inequality. The CARICOM Reparations Commission has developed a 10-point plan that outlines their vision for reparations. This plan includes demands for formal apologies, repatriation options for descendants of enslaved Africans, and development programs to address the educational, healthcare, and economic needs of Caribbean nations. Beckles has been vocal about Britain's responsibility to repair the damages caused by the slave trade, urging for a summit between Caribbean nations and European colonial powers to discuss the details of reparatory justice. While the debate over reparations continues, the Labour government is also facing significant backlash over its decision to hand back the Chagos Islands to Mauritius after 200 years of British control. This controversial move has sparked outrage, particularly among conservative critics, who see it as a dangerous precedent for other British overseas territories and a betrayal of British sovereignty. The Chagos Islands, located in the Indian Ocean, hold strategic significance due to the Diego Garcia military base, operated jointly by the UK and the US. The base has been pivotal for Western military operations in the Middle East. The decision to return the islands to Mauritius has raised fears that Britain is giving up an essential military asset, especially as global tensions rise. Dame Andrea Jenkins, a former Conservative MP, was one of the most vocal critics, accusing Labour of being ashamed of Britain's history. Jenkins claimed that Labour's left-leaning stance seeks to make Britons feel guilty about the country's colonial past. The Chagos Islands handover, she argues, is part of this broader agenda where the UK is surrendering territories that hold strategic value. Jenkins and other critics have also raised concerns that China may take advantage of the situation. Mauritius, which is closely allied with China, could allow China to gain a military foothold in the region, further complicating the geopolitical balance. With the UK ceding sovereignty over the islands, there is fear that China could eventually gain influence over this critical territory. Adding to the criticism, Tom Tugendhat, a shadow security minister, accused Labour of compromising Britain's national security. Tugendhat slammed the decision as reckless, particularly as it comes at a time when global powers like China are looking to expand their influence. Tugendhat warned that the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar could face similar threats if the UK continues to relinquish control over key overseas territories. As the reparations debate and the Chagos Islands controversy unfold, Keir Starmer finds himself at the centre of two major issues that could define his leadership. On one side, Caribbean nations are calling for Britain to confront its colonial past and address the legacies of slavery through reparations. On the other, critics fear that Starmer's government is undermining British sovereignty by surrendering strategically important territories. With pressure mounting on both fronts, how Starmer navigates these issues will have far-reaching consequences for his government and Britain's global standing. Will he open the door to reparations talks and address Britain's historical wrongs, or will his decisions on these controversies lead to further backlash and criticism? Stay tuned for more updates on these developments, and don't forget to subscribe for all the latest political news. Shocking Labour scandal.